I have weathered 40 years of nor'easters on this coastline. Hurricanes that ripped roofs clean off. Waves that swallowed boats whole. But nothing prepared me for my own son sitting at my birthday table, looking me dead in the eyes and saying, "Enjoy it, Dad. At your age, who knows how many you've got left?" He smiled. I smiled back. And the next morning, while he was still sleeping in my guest room, 3 patrol cars rolled down my gravel drive, and his entire life crumbled to dust. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Please like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments which country or city you are tuning in from. A gentle note. This tale blends dramatized scenarios with educational insights. If names or settings seem familiar, it is entirely by chance, though the lessons here are profoundly important. My name is Walter Brennan. Most folks around the Outer Banks call me Walt, or Captain Walt, if they remember the old days when my trawler cut through the Pamlico Sound before dawn every morning. I am 69 years old. I live alone in a cedar-shingled house that sits on a bluff overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, 95 acres of coastline that my wife Dorothy and I bought in 1982 when we were young and foolish and believed love could build anything. It was October, my birthday, and I had made the mistake of believing my son Kyle when he said he wanted to celebrate together. That he missed me. That he wanted the whole family here. His wife Lisa, my grandkids Megan and Jack, even my daughter Samantha driving down from Wilmington. A real gathering, he said. Like the old days when Mom was still here. I should have known better. Dorothy always said I trusted with my whole chest when I should have been trusting with my eyes open. But Kyle's voice on the phone had sounded warm, genuine, like the boy who used to chase ghost crabs on the beach at sunset, laughing so hard he could barely breathe. I wanted that boy back. So I said yes. The evening started beautifully. October on the Outer Banks carries a particular kind of magic. The summer tourists have gone home. The air turns crisp and salted, and the light goes golden an hour before sunset. We ate on the back deck overlooking the ocean. Grilled sea bass, corn on the cob, hush puppies, coleslaw, Dorothy's recipes. Everyone. Megan, 8 years old with sandy hair and her grandmother's curious eyes, asked me to tell the story about the time I caught a marlin bigger than my boat. Jack, 5 and fearless, wanted to know if sharks could eat houses. Lisa sat quiet and thin, picking at her food, smiling when spoken to but offering little else. She looked exhausted in a way that went deeper than tired. Something was wrong in that house, and it showed on her face like a bruise she could not quite conceal. Samantha arrived late, apologizing about traffic from Wilmington. She hugged me tight at the door, longer than usual, and whispered, "Happy birthday, Dad. How are you really?" That was Sam, always checking beneath the surface. It was after the cake, after Jack had fallen asleep on the couch, and Megan was drawing pictures of dolphins at the kitchen table, that Kyle raised his glass of bourbon. The adults were on the deck, the ocean black and restless below us, the lighthouse beam sweeping across the water every 4 seconds the way it had for 100 years. "To Dad," Kyle said, standing up with that easy confidence he had always worn like a borrowed jacket. 69 years old, and still out here on this cliff by himself, stubborn as the rocks. Everyone chuckled. Then he turned to Lisa, lowering his voice just enough that he thought the wind would carry it away from me. "But I have spent 40 years reading the ocean, listening for shifts in the wind, hearing what the water was trying to tell me. My ears are sharper than people assume. This old man won't last another year out here alone," Kyle said. "One bad storm, one fall, and it's over. We just need to be patient." Lisa's eyes flickered to me. I kept my expression perfectly still, took a sip of my coffee, let the words settle into my chest like stones dropping into deep water. Kyle straightened up and turned back to me with that warm smile, that practiced warmth. "Seriously though, Dad, have you thought about what happens with this place? Estate planning, that kind of thing? Just in case. For peace of mind." I looked at my son. Really looked at him. The boy who used to fall asleep on my boat with his fishing rod still in his hands had grown into a man whose eyes calculated value in everything they touched. When had that happened? When had the wonder been replaced by arithmetic? Let's just enjoy tonight, I said. We can talk about all that another time. Something flickered across Kyle's face. Frustration, maybe. Impatience. But he covered it quickly with another sip of bourbon and a nod. Sure, Dad. No rush. But I had heard what I heard. And that night, after everyone had gone to bed, and the house was quiet, except for the eternal conversation between wind and waves, I lay in my bedroom, staring at the ceiling. Dorothy's voice came to me the way it always did in the dark, clear as the day she said it. 3 months before she died, we had been sitting on this very deck watching a storm roll in from the northeast, and she had turned to me with those sharp blue eyes and said, "Kyle loves what this land can give him, Walt, not what it is. Remember that when I'm gone." I had argued with her then, told her she was being unfair, that Kyle was just practical, just thinking ahead. But Dorothy had always seen people more clearly than I could. She saw the truth the way she saw the weather coming, long before it arrived. Now, lying in the dark with my son's words echoing in my skull, I finally understood what she had been trying to tell me. And for the first time, in 69 years on this coast, I felt afraid. Not of the ocean, not of the storms, but of my own blood. To understand why those words shook me the way they did, you need to know what this land means. Not just its price tag, though Lord knows people have tried to put one on it. You need to know the life that soaked into this soil, the love that built these walls. The woman who stood on this bluff 42 years ago, 7 months pregnant, wind whipping her dark hair sideways, and pointed at the dunes below us and said, "This is where we grow old together, Walt. Right here." Dorothy Ann Calloway. 24 years old when she said that. Fearless in a way that made me braver. Just by standing next to her. I was 27. A deckhand on a commercial trawler, making barely enough to keep our apartment in Manteo. We had no business buying land. No business dreaming that big. But Dorothy never did anything small. We found the listing in the Outer Banks Sentinel on a Tuesday morning in March of 1982. 95 acres, oceanfront bluff property. Cedar house needs work. Unobstructed Atlantic views. The price was insane for a deckhand and a part-time bookkeeper. But Dorothy circled it in red pen and looked at me across the breakfast table with those clear blue eyes. We scraped together every penny we had. Borrowed from her father. Borrowed from mine. Took a mortgage that made the banker shake his head and wish us luck in a tone that meant he did not expect to see that money again. We signed the papers on a Friday afternoon, drove out to the property, and stood on the bluff watching the sun set over Pamlico Sound to the west, while the Atlantic stretched endless to the east. The house was a disaster. Built in 1941, cedar shingles half-rotted, porch sagging, plumbing that groaned like a dying animal every time you turned a faucet. The roof leaked in 4 places. The foundation had shifted so the kitchen floor sloped toward the east, like the whole house was trying to slide into the ocean. But Dorothy walked through every room with her hand on her belly where Kyle was growing, and she smiled. "Good bones," she said. "We can fix the rest." We spent that first summer rebuilding. Dorothy 8 months pregnant on a ladder, paint roller in her hand, refusing to let me do it alone. I replaced the roof, board by board. We ripped out pipes, rewired the electrical, rebuilt the porch from scratch. Kyle was born in August, 2 weeks early, as if he could not wait to see what we were building. By the following spring, I had saved enough to buy my own boat. A 42-foot trawler I named the Dorothy May. For the next 35 years, I fished these waters. Left before dawn, came back after sunset, my arms aching, my clothes stinking of salt and diesel and fish guts. Dorothy managed everything on land. She kept the books, paid the bills, raised our children, maintained the house, and somehow still had the energy to stand on the bluff at sunset and wave when she saw my boat rounding the point. Sam came along 3 years after Kyle. Our daughter, who inherited Dorothy's sharp mind and her mother's inability to let anything slide without examination. From the time she could talk, Sam asked questions that made adults uncomfortable. She grew up to become a doctor, Navy-trained, precise and unflinching. She settled in Wilmington after her service, close enough to visit, far enough to have her own life. Kyle, though. Kyle was the ocean kid. He lived on my boat from the time he could walk, learned to tie knots at 4, bait hooks at 6, read the weather at 8. He would stand at the bow with his arms spread wide, face into the wind, laughing. Dorothy used to take photographs of him from the bluff. I still have them in a box somewhere. Kyle at 7, holding his first bluefish, grinning so wide you could count every tooth. Kyle at 12, steering the Dorothy May through the inlet with the focus of a surgeon. Kyle at 16, telling me he wanted to captain his own boat someday. Then somewhere around 18, the ocean stopped being enough. He wanted more than what these waters could give him. Went to East Carolina University, studied business. Came back talking about opportunity and markets and growth potential. He started a charter boat tour company in his mid-20s, running fishing excursions and sunset cruises for tourists. For a while it worked. He married Lisa, had Megan, then Jack. Life seemed good, but life on the coast teaches you that calm water can hide dangerous currents. And Kyle's business started struggling around the same time Dorothy got sick. It happened fast. Dorothy had always been the strongest person I knew. Never missed a day of work. Never complained. Never slowed down. Then one afternoon in late September 3 years ago, she was hanging laundry on the line behind the house. I was cleaning the boat at the dock. I heard the sheets flapping in the wind, and then silence. When I came up the bluff, she was on the ground, the white sheets billowing around her like wings. Cardiac arrest. Massive and sudden. The paramedics came in 11 minutes, but she was already gone. 58 years old. I was 66. I thought about selling after that. Thought about it every morning when I made coffee for 1 instead of 2. Every evening when the sunset painted the ocean gold and there was no one beside me to see it. Every night when the bed felt like a life raft in an empty sea. But every time I walked to the bluff, I could feel her there. In the salt wind. In the cedar walls. We had rebuilt together. In the sound of waves against the rocks below, that endless rhythm she had fallen asleep to every night for 40 years. This was not just land. This was Dorothy. This was us. Every board, every nail, every grain of sand held a piece of our story. So I stayed. And the developers came. Like gulls circling a carcass. They appeared within months of Dorothy's passing. Phone calls, letters. Men in expensive suits standing in my driveway with folders full of numbers. The last offer had been $8.5 million. Cash. Close in 30 days. I turned them all down. Sam understood. She never once suggested I should sell. She saw what I saw when I looked at this place. Memory made solid. Love that outlasted death. But Kyle's visits after his mother's funeral took on a different quality. Less about family, more about futures. Less about remembering Dorothy, more about calculating what she had left behind. Questions about appraisals, about zoning, about what the coastal development companies were offering. I told myself he was just being practical. Just worried about his old man out here alone. But Dorothy's voice kept whispering in the back of my mind, the way the ocean whispers before a storm. The sharks smelled blood in the water. And I did not know that my own son was swimming with them. The phone rang at 8:15 on a Sunday morning. 2 weeks after my birthday dinner. I was on the back deck with my second cup of coffee, watching a pod of dolphins arc through the gray October swell about 100 yards offshore. The air smelled of salt and coming rain. When I saw Sam's name on the screen, Something in my chest loosened the way it always did when she called. Like a fist unclenching. "Morning, Dad." Her voice was warm, familiar, steady as a lighthouse beam. "How's the coast treating you?" "Same as always," I said, settling back into my chair. "Dolphins are running early this year. Saw a pod just now heading south." "Already? Must be a cold winter coming." She paused. I could hear her coffee mug clink against a countertop. "How are you really, though?" After the birthday dinner, that was Sam. Never content with the surface answer. She had been that way since she was 6 years old. Asking why the moon followed our car at night. Why fish could breathe water, but we could not. Why Grandma cried at church, even though church was supposed to be happy. "I'm fine," I said. And then, because lying to Sam was like trying to hide from a searchlight, I added, "Thinking a lot. About things Kyle said." Silence on her end. Not the comfortable kind. The kind that meant she was deciding how much truth to deliver at once. I had learned over the years that when Sam went quiet, something heavy was coming. "Dad," she finally said, her tone shifting from casual to careful. "I need to tell you something. And I need you to just listen before you get defensive about your son." My jaw tightened. "I'm listening." "Kyle's been calling me 3 times this month. Every single conversation circles back to the same thing. How much is the land worth now? Has Dad had it appraised? Does Dad have a will? Has Dad talked to an estate attorney?" She took a breath. "He's not asking because he's worried about you. He's asking because he's worried about himself." I stared out at the ocean. The dolphins had disappeared beneath the surface, and the water looked flat and gray and endless. "He's just being practical, Sam. When you get to my age, people start thinking about these things." "Dad." Her voice was gentle, but there was steel underneath. The same steel Dorothy used to have when she knew she was right, and I was being stubborn. "Listen to me. After Mom's funeral, I was there. I watched it happen in real time. The day we buried her, Kyle was in your study, going through the filing cabinet. I caught him with the property deed in his hands. He said he was organizing paperwork to help you. But his face, Dad, his face was not the face of a grieving son. It was the face of someone doing math." My hand gripped the coffee mug tighter. I wanted to argue. Wanted to say she was wrong, that grief makes people act strangely, that Kyle was just processing things differently. But the words would not come because somewhere deep down, in the place where instinct lives, I knew she was telling the truth. "And there's something else," Sam continued. "Last month I was driving through Wilmington on my way to a conference. I passed Kyle's house. Just on a whim, I slowed down." She paused again. There was a notice taped to their front door. Yellow paper, official looking. "An eviction notice, Dad." "From the bank." The coffee turned cold in my stomach. "What?" Lisa answered the door. She looked terrible. Thin, exhausted, dark circles under her eyes. She tried to act normal, but I could see the fear on her. The house was half-packed, boxes everywhere. Megan was quiet, coloring alone in her room. Jack was watching television with that blank stare kids get when they know something is wrong but nobody will explain it. I closed my eyes. My grandchildren. Living in that kind of fear. I asked Lisa what was going on. Sam said. She started crying. Said Kyle's charter business collapsed 8 months ago. Lost the boats, lost the clients, lawsuits piling up. She said he'd been disappearing for days at a time, coming home smelling like whiskey, making phone calls at 2 in the morning. She doesn't know where the money went, Dad, only that it's gone. The wind picked up, pushing whitecaps across the ocean's surface. I watched them break and dissolve, break and dissolve. Endless repetition. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked, my voice rougher than I intended. Because I didn't want to poison your birthday. And because I hoped maybe Kyle's call to you was genuine. Maybe he really did want to reconnect. to be honest about his situation, to ask for help the right way. She exhaled. But then at your dinner, I watched him. The way he looked at the property. The way he steered conversations toward value and planning. And that comment he made about you not lasting another year. Dad, that wasn't concern, that was calculation. I said nothing. Just listened to the wind and the waves and my daughter's steady breathing on the other end of the line. I'm not saying cut him off, Sam said, softer now. He's my brother. I love him. But I'm saying protect yourself. Pay attention. If he calls, note the date. What he says. What he asks. If he visits, watch what he does when he thinks you're not looking. You sound like your mother. I said quietly. Good. Mom was usually right. A pause. Dad, promise me you'll be careful. Something is wrong with Kyle. Financially, wrong. And when people are desperate and their father owns $8 million of oceanfront property, you have to at least consider the possibility that love is not the only thing motivating them. I wanted to argue. Wanted to defend my son the way fathers are supposed to. But Dorothy's voice was there again, layered beneath Sam's warning like a harmony. Kyle loves what this land can give him, not what it is. I'll be careful, I said. I promise. Thank you. Call me if anything feels off. Anything at all. Even if it seems small. After we hung up, I sat on that deck for a long time. The rain came eventually, soft and steady, dimpling the ocean surface. I let it fall on me, let it soak through my flannel shirt and chill my skin. Somehow the cold felt appropriate. 2 children. One who called every Sunday to ask how I was feeling. One who called 3 times a month to ask what I was worth. I went inside, dried off, and opened the junk drawer in the kitchen. Behind the rubber bands and dead batteries and old receipts, I found a small leather notebook Dorothy had used for grocery lists. Her handwriting was still on the first few pages. Milk, eggs, bread, fish for Friday. The last entry was dated 3 days before she died. I turned to a blank page and wrote the date. Then I wrote everything I could remember from Kyle's birthday visit. His exact words. The look on his face. The questions he asked. The way Lisa flinched when he mentioned estate planning. Document everything. That is what Dorothy would have done. She kept records of everything. Every expense. Every conversation with contractors. Every promise made. She used to say, memory is a story we tell ourselves. Paper is the truth. So I would keep the truth. And I would hope I never needed it. I need to go back. Back to July. 3 months before that birthday dinner. 3 months before Kyle raised his glass and measured my remaining years with a smile. Back to the day the distance between us stopped being silence and became something sharper. It was a Thursday in mid-July. The kind of heat that turns the Outer Banks into a steam bath. Humidity so thick you could wring the air out like a washcloth. I was down at the dock replacing rotted planks on the boathouse floor. Sweat running into my eyes. My shirt soaked through before 9 in the morning. The Dorothy May sat at her mooring, rocking gently in the tide. I had not taken her out in months, but I kept her maintained. Some habits you do not break. I heard the tires on gravel before I saw the vehicle. A black Lexus SUV, kicking up a cloud of dust as it came down the long drive through the sea oats and dune grass. Not Kyle's old truck. Something new. Something expensive that did not match a man whose business had supposedly been struggling. Kyle climbed out alone. No Lisa, no kids. He wore pressed khakis and a linen shirt with the sleeves rolled up, sunglasses pushed back on his head. He looked like a man trying to sell something. That was my first thought. Not my son coming to visit. A salesman arriving for a pitch. Hey, Dad. He crossed the yard with long strides, arms wide for a hug I accepted stiffly. Hope it's okay I didn't call first. Was in the area. Thought I'd swing by. In the area. The Outer Banks is not a place you pass through on your way to somewhere else. You come here on purpose, or you do not come at all. But I let it go. Made lunch. Fried flounder I had caught that morning. Hush puppies. Sliced tomatoes from the garden Dorothy had planted 15 years ago that still produced every summer without fail. We ate on the deck, the ocean spread out below us in a glittering sheet of blue. For a while things felt almost normal. Kyle asked about the dolphins. Told me Megan was doing well in school. Said Jack had learned to ride a bike without training wheels. I asked about the business. His jaw tightened. Restructuring, he said. It's complicated. Market's been rough for charter operations since the storm damage last year. He took a long drink of his iced tea and changed the subject. This view, though, forgot how incredible it is. You ever think about what this coastline is going to look like in 10 years? I set my fork down. Something in his tone had shifted. The warm sun visiting his father had receded, and in his place sat something else. Something with an agenda. It'll look the same, I said. That's the point of protected coastline. Protected. Kyle smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. Dad, you know how much development pressure there is on the Outer Banks right now? Luxury resorts, eco-tourism complexes. There's a guy out of Miami, serious investor. Been buying up every available parcel from Nag's Head to Ocracoke. He's offering way above market. Way above. I picked up my plate and carried it to the railing. Leaned against the cedar post and looked out at the water. The Atlantic stretched to the horizon, calm on the surface, but I knew what lived underneath. Riptides that could pull a grown man a mile offshore in minutes. Sandbars that shifted overnight. Beautiful and deadly, if you did not respect it. I've had offers, I said. Turned them all down, Dad. Kyle stood up, came to stand beside me. Close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive that did not belong on this coast. I'm not talking about some random lowball. This developer, he's offering $9 million for parcels half this size. Do you understand what your 95 acres of unobstructed oceanfront is worth right now? 8, maybe 9 million. I know what it's worth. Then why are you sitting on it? His voice climbed, that careful patience wearing thin. You're 69 years old, alone out here. What's the plan? You fish until you can't walk anymore? You die in this house with nobody around to call an ambulance? The words landed like a slap. I turned to look at him. Really look. His face was flushed, not from heat, but from something else. Desperation. Need. That new Lexus in the driveway suddenly made sense. Borrowed time. Borrowed money. A man performing success while drowning in its opposite. Your mother and I built this place from nothing, I said. My voice low and steady. Every board, every nail. She died here. Her ashes are scattered on that beach below us. This is not a portfolio, Kyle. It's not an investment. It's a life. Mom's gone, Dad. The words came out sharp, almost cruel. She's been gone 3 years. You can't keep living in a shrine. What would she think? Watching you waste away out here. Clinging to sand and memories while the world moves on. The silence that fell between us was nothing like the ocean quiet I loved. This was the silence before a hurricane. The dead air that meant something violent was about to break through. Don't, I said, and my voice came out harder than I intended. Don't you dare tell me what your mother would think. You didn't sit with her. You didn't hold her hand. You came to the funeral and asked me about the property deed before the flowers on her casket had wilted. Kyle's face went white. His mouth opened and closed. For a moment he looked like the boy he used to be, caught doing something wrong, waiting for the disappointment he knew was coming. But then his expression hardened into something I did not recognize. Fine, he said. Fine. Your land. Your choice. But one of these days, Dad, something is going to happen out here, and nobody will be around to help. And then what? Grace gets to deal with probate while developers circle anyway? He said Sam's name wrong, called her Grace. He had been drinking, I realized. Not enough to slur, but enough that his edges were showing. Enough that the mask had slipped. I did not correct him. Just stood there gripping the deck rail, watching my son walk back into the house. The screen door slammed behind him, like a punctuation mark. That night we barely spoke. Kyle went to the guest room early, said he was tired. I sat on the deck in the dark, listening to the ocean breathe below me, thinking about Dorothy, about what she would say if she could see us now. At 5:45 the next morning, I woke to the sound of an engine starting. I pulled on jeans, went to the window. Kyle's black Lexus was already rolling down the drive, tail lights red in the pre-dawn dark. No goodbye. No coffee on the porch. No apology. I stood in the doorway watching until the taillights disappeared behind the dune line. Until the dust settled back onto the gravel. Until the only sound was the waves and the wind and the gulls crying overhead. He did not look back. Not once. And I stood there in my bare feet on the cold porch boards, wondering when my son became a stranger, wondering if maybe he always had been, and I had just been too in love with the boy he used to be to see the man he had become. I did not know, standing there in that July dawn, that it would be 3 months before I heard his voice again. 3 months of silence. 3 months before that birthday dinner when he would smile and raise his glass and toast my remaining years as if counting them down. After Kyle left that July morning, the silence did not bother me at first. I told myself we both needed space, that he would call when he was ready. But August passed without a word. I left a voicemail mid-month, kept it short. Just checking in, son. Hope the kids are well. No response. September brought cool fronts off the Atlantic, and still nothing. It was a Sunday afternoon in late September when I found myself in my study, the small room Dorothy used to call my captain's quarters. On the top shelf, behind my father's brass sextant, sat a wooden box, cedar, salt-stained and sun-faded. I had not opened it in over a year. I carried it to the desk by the window. The lid creaked, and the smell hit me first. Old photographs have a particular scent, paper and chemicals and time, but these smelled like sunscreen and salt water and the ghost of summers that would never come again. Polaroids and prints, dozens of them. The unposed moments Dorothy collected between the formal portraits. I picked up the first one, Kyle at 7. Standing on the dock holding a bluefish nearly as long as his arm. Gap-toothed grin blazing with pride. Dorothy had written on the back, Kyle's first keeper. He screamed so loud the pelicans flew off. June, 1989. Another. Kyle at 10, sitting in the fighting chair on the Dorothy May. Rod bent double, battling a blackfin tuna that outweighed him by 20 pounds. It took 45 minutes to land it. When we got it on deck, he collapsed, laughing and crying at the same time. Did you see that? Dad? Did you see? I always saw. Kyle at 12, standing at the helm in pre-dawn dark, small hands on the wheel, eyes fixed on channel markers with absolute concentration. Dorothy snapped it from the cabin doorway and wrote, "Our little captain. He will run this place someday." I closed my eyes. The ache in my chest was sharp as a fishhook beneath the ribs. Where did that boy go? Kyle at 16, leaning against the dock piling, watching the sunset. That was the year he pulled away. Stopped coming on the boat. Wanted weekends in town, instead of checking crab pots at dawn. Normal, I told myself. He would come back, but he never quite did. He went to East Carolina University, studied business, came back talking about opportunity and markets, in a language that felt foreign on this salt-weathered porch. Dorothy would say in bed, "He's searching. Walt, let him search. He'll find his way home." The charter business started in 2012. 2 boats, hired crews, sunset cruises, and deep-sea fishing for tourists. For 5 or 6 years it worked. He married Lisa, had Megan, then Jack. Christmas felt full again. Then the decline. Kyle's face growing thinner. His phone ringing at odd hours. Lisa's smiles turning brittle, the children quieter. The last Christmas before everything shattered. 2 years ago, Kyle came alone to pick up gifts. We sat in the kitchen drinking coffee when his phone rang. His entire body went rigid. He excused himself to the boathouse. I had not meant to follow. But that flash of raw fear on his face pulled me to the window. The boathouse door was open. Kyle paced inside, free hand gripping the back of his neck. I just need more time. His voice carried on the cold air, strained in a way I had never heard. Tell him, I'm good for it. Just give me until March. Please. A pause. Faster pacing. I know what I owe. I know. But the boats are gone. The client sued. I've got nothing left. Just time. That's all I'm asking. All. Aura. All. 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 His voice cracked. I backed away from the window, feeling like I had witnessed something private and terrible, like watching a man drown from shore, too far to throw a rope. When Kyle came back inside, his face was pale, his hands unsteady. He smiled that practiced smile and said everything was fine. Work stuff. Nothing serious. I let him lie. That is what I am most ashamed of now. I saw my son drowning, and did not ask what was pulling him under. Did not say, whatever it is, we can face it together. Maybe things would have gone differently. Maybe not, but I will carry that silence with me. I placed the photographs back in the box, closed the lid, ran my fingers over the salt-stained wood. Where did that boy go? The one who screamed with joy over his first fish. The one who steered my boat through the inlet with steady hands. The one who promised Dorothy he would keep this coast wild forever. I did not know yet how far he had fallen. Did not know about the gambling, the debts, the dangerous men circling him. I only knew my son was lost at sea and I could not reach him. And that 3-month silence felt less like anger now, and more like something darker. Like a man going quiet because he was planning something he did not want his father to hear. The first incident happened on a Tuesday morning in early November. I was on the back deck replacing a section of weathered railing that had been on my list for weeks. The ocean below was steel gray, choppy with white caps, and the wind had a bite to it that said winter was no longer a suggestion. I had my tool belt on, a fresh cup of coffee steaming on the rail post, and I was leaning against the middle section of railing to test its strength before I started work on the far end. The railing gave way, not slowly, not with a creak or a groan of warning. It simply released, the way a door opens when someone turns the handle from the other side. One moment I was leaning my full weight against solid cedar. The next moment there was nothing between me and a 40-foot drop to the rocks below. My body reacted before my brain caught up. My left hand shot backward, grabbed the deck post behind me, and my fingers locked on like a vice. My boots skidded on the salt-damp boards. For one terrible second I was suspended at an angle over empty air, the rocks and churning surf below me sharp and gray and waiting. I hauled myself back, fell onto the deck on my hands and knees, heart slamming against my ribs like it wanted out. I stayed there breathing hard, staring at the gap where the railing had been. The cedar rail lay on the rocks below, already being licked by the incoming tide. When my hands stopped shaking enough to be useful, I crawled to the edge and looked at the posts. 4 lag bolts should have been holding that section of railing to the deck frame. 4 heavy-duty stainless steel bolts rated to hold 300 pounds each. Every single one was gone. Not sheared off. Not corroded through. Gone. The holes were clean, empty, as if someone had backed them out with a socket wrench. I sat back on my heels. Told myself I must have forgotten to tighten them after the last repair. Told myself that salt air corrodes hardware, that bolts can work loose over time, that living alone makes a man forgetful. I found replacement bolts in my workshop, installed them, and tried to put it out of my mind. 3 days later, I woke at 2 in the morning to a smell that did not belong. Faint at first, just a whisper beneath the salt air that always crept through my bedroom window. but it grew stronger as I lay there in the dark, and by the time my brain identified it, I was already out of bed and moving. Gas. Propane. The sharp chemical stink of it threading through the house like a snake. I did not turn on a light. Did not flip a switch. Moved through the dark hallway in my bare feet. Heart hammering, breath shallow. Down the stairs, through the living room, into the kitchen. The smell was strongest here, thick enough to taste on the back of my tongue. I crossed to the stove and found the source. The valve on the propane line behind the range had been opened. Not the burner knobs on top, the main supply valve that fed the line from the tank outside. Turned counterclockwise. Wide open, gas flowing freely into my kitchen, pooling in the low spaces, filling the room with an invisible cloud, that one spark, one static discharge, one flip of a light switch would have turned into an inferno. I shut the valve with trembling hands, opened every window and the back door, stood on the deck in the freezing November air in my underwear, gulping clean salt wind while the house aired out behind me. Could I have left it open myself? I had cooked dinner that evening, pork chops and rice. Had I somehow bumped the supply valve while cleaning behind the stove? I could not remember, but I had never touched that valve in 20 years. Never had reason to. I told myself it was nothing. A fluke. An old house settling into its eccentricities. 5 days after that, I needed a box of flares from the storage loft above the boathouse. The loft was accessible by a wooden ladder nailed to the interior wall and a heavy rope and pulley dumbwaiter system I had installed 15 years ago for hauling supplies up and down. The dumbwaiter ran on a steel cable rated for 500 pounds, threaded through a pulley bolted to the ceiling beam. I climbed the ladder slowly. My knees protested these days, but the ladder was solid. Each rung bolted firmly to the wall studs. In the loft, I found the flares in a waterproof case near the back wall. I loaded them into the dumbwaiter basket, latched the gate, and reached for the cable to lower it down. The cable came apart in my hand. I stared at the frayed end. Not frayed. Cut. 3/4 of the way through, the individual strands severed clean, leaving only a few threads holding the full weight of the basket. If I had loaded anything heavier, if I had leaned on it for support while climbing as I sometimes did, those remaining threads would have snapped and the counterweight would have dropped, yanking the cable through the pulley with enough force to take fingers off or whip across a face like a steel blade. I set the basket down carefully, took the cut end of the cable to the window where the afternoon light was strongest, held it close to my eyes. The cuts were clean, straight, made by something sharp and precise. Bolt cutters or cable shears. Not corrosion, not wear, not accident. I sat down on the loft floor, my back against the wall, and stared at that cable end for a very long time. My heart was doing something it had not done since the day Dorothy collapsed in the yard. Beating too fast, skipping, racing to keep up with a fear my body understood before my mind was willing to accept. 3 incidents in 10 days. A railing that lost its bolts. A gas valve that opened itself. A steel cable cut 3/4 through. Each one could have killed me. Each one designed to look like negligence, like an old man failing to maintain his property, like an accident waiting to happen. Either God was trying to take me, or someone else was. And God had always been patient with me. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Coincidence. An old house. Salt air. Deferred maintenance. I fixed the cable, replaced the railing bolts with new ones, double-checked the gas valve, moved on. Tried to anyway, but I started locking doors I had never locked before. Started checking windows at night. Started sleeping lighter, waking to every creak and groan of the house settling in the wind. 2 weeks after the cable incident, on a gray Wednesday in mid-November, I drove into Hatteras Village to pick up my monthly prescription. I have been taking metformin for type 2 diabetes since 2019. 500 milligrams, twice a day, morning and evening with food. It keeps my blood sugar stable Keeps me on my feet. Keeps me functional. Nothing dramatic. Just a small white pill that lets me keep living the life I built. The pharmacy in Hatteras Village is a small place, tucked between a surf shop and a seafood restaurant. Margaret Chen has been the pharmacist there for 12 years. She knows every regular by name, knows their medications, asks about their families. That morning she handed me my white paper bag with a smile. "How's the coast treating you, Mr. Brennan?" "Still standing," I said. "Barely," she laughed. I paid, drove home, set the bag on the kitchen counter next to the fruit bowl Dorothy used to keep filled with whatever was in season. That evening I took my pill with dinner the way I always did. Shook one tablet into my palm, swallowed it with water, thought nothing of it. Except something nagged at me as I washed my dinner plate. A feeling more than a thought. I dried my hands and went back to the counter. Picked up the bottle, shook another pill into my palm, and held it under the kitchen light. The shape was right. Oval. Scored down the middle. But something was different. I could not place it at first. Then, it hit me. Dorothy used to line up my pills every morning before she got sick. She had a system. Blue blood pressure pill on the left, white metformin on the right, fish oil capsule in the middle. She knew every pill by touch, by color, by the way light reflected off the coating. This pill was white, but not the same white. My metformin had always been smooth, almost glossy, with a clean stamped imprint you could feel with your thumbnail. This pill was chalky, matte. The imprint was there, but soft around the edges, like it had been pressed into clay rather than stamped by a machine. I went upstairs to the bathroom cabinet. In the back, behind the bandages and the expired cough syrup, I found my old metformin bottle from October. 3 pills left that I had forgotten to throw away. I carried it downstairs and set both bottles side by side on the kitchen table. From the old bottle, I shook out a pill. Smooth, glossy, clean imprint. Metformin 500. Sharp as a mint stamp. From the new bottle, another. Chalky, matte, imprint blurred. Slightly thicker. They were not the same pill. My hands went cold. I set them both down on the white tablecloth and stared at them the way you stare at a snake you have just realized is coiled beside your foot. That night, I did not take my evening dose. The next morning, I skipped the morning dose too. By afternoon, my blood sugar had climbed, and I felt shaky. But the shakiness was familiar. Expected. What was not expected was what happened over those 2 days when I was taking the new pills. The dizziness had started on day 1. Subtle. Just a lightness behind my eyes when I stood up too fast. By day 2, my vision blurred at the edges. My hands trembled when I held my coffee cup. A metallic taste coated my tongue that no amount of water could wash away. I had blamed it on fatigue, on stress, on age. Now I knew better. The next morning I drove to Hatteras Village before the pharmacy opened. I sat in my truck in the parking lot, both bottles in a paper bag on the passenger seat, and waited. When Margaret Chen unlocked the front door at 8:30, I was standing on the step. "Mr. Brennan." She looked surprised. "Everything okay? I need you to look at something," I said. Privately. She led me to the consultation room in the back and closed the door. I set both bottles on the counter and explained. The difference in appearance, the symptoms, the timing. Margaret put on nitrile gloves, took 1 pill from each bottle, and examined them under her desk lamp with a magnifying loupe. The silence that followed lasted maybe 30 seconds, but it felt like 30 minutes. "This coating," she said quietly, turning the new pill under the light. "It's chalk-based. Pharmaceutical metformin uses a polymer film coating. It should not powder when you touch it." She scraped lightly with a metal spatula. White dust came away. "And this imprint, see how the edges are rounded? Legitimate pharmaceutical stamps are crisp, machine cut. This was pressed. Probably a pill press mold." She looked up at me. Her face had gone pale behind her glasses. "Mr. Brennan, these are not metformin. Someone replaced your medication." I gripped the edge of the counter. "What are they?" "I cannot say definitively without a lab analysis. But based on the symptoms you described, dizziness, blurred vision, tremor, metallic taste." She paused. "Those are consistent with sulfonylurea toxicity. It's a class of diabetes drug that forces the pancreas to produce insulin regardless of blood sugar levels. In a patient already on metformin, taking sulfonylurea at this dosage would cause severe hypoglycemia, dangerously low blood sugar." "How dangerous?" Margaret met my eyes. "If you had continued taking these for another 7 to 10 days, Mr. Brennan, your blood sugar would have dropped below 40 milligrams per deciliter. Likely during sleep, when you would not notice the symptoms, you would have slipped into a hypoglycemic coma. And without intervention, without someone there to find you and call an ambulance." She did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. I sat down on the consultation room chair because my legs would not hold me anymore. The room tilted slightly. Though whether from residual effects of the pills or from pure terror, I could not tell. "You need to stop taking these immediately," Margaret said, already sealing the new bottle in a plastic evidence bag. "And Mr. Brennan, you need to call the police. This is not a pharmacy error. Someone did this deliberately." I nodded, took the sealed bag, walked out of the pharmacy into the November gray, sat in my truck in the parking lot, with my hands on the steering wheel, shaking so badly the whole cab trembled. Someone had switched my medication. Someone who knew my prescription, my pharmacy, my routine. Someone who knew I lived alone and took my pills without anyone watching. Someone who wanted me to fall asleep one night and simply never wake up. My son. My own son wanted me to never wake up. I sat in that truck for 20 minutes before I could make my hands work well enough to hold a phone. The parking lot of Hatteras Village Pharmacy, 9:15 on a Wednesday morning, seagulls wheeling overhead, the smell of frying fish drifting from the restaurant next door. Normal life happening all around me while my world collapsed into a single impossible truth. I pulled up Sam's number. My thumb hovered over the screen. For a moment I thought about calling Kyle instead, confronting him, demanding an explanation, giving him a chance to deny it, to explain it away, to tell me I was crazy and paranoid and wrong. But Dorothy's voice was in my head, steady and clear. "Trust yourself first, Walt." I pressed Sam's name. She answered on the second ring. "Dad? Everything okay?" "Samantha." My voice came out rough, broken in a way I could not hide. "I need you to come home. Now. Don't tell Kyle. Don't tell anyone. Just come." Silence. 1 beat. 2. Then her voice shifted from casual to clinical, the Navy doctor emerging from beneath the daughter. "I'm grabbing my keys. What happened? Just come. Please. I'll explain when you get here. I'm leaving now. 4 hours. Keep your doors locked. Do you hear me?" "Locked. Yes. Are you safe right now?" "Right this moment? I think so. Stay in a public place until I get there. Go to a restaurant, a library, anywhere with people. Don't go home alone. Sam, promise me, Dad." "I promise." I drove to the Hatteras Island Library and sat in the reading room for 3 hours. Stared at a book about the history of the Cape Hatteras Lighthouse without reading a single word. Around me, elderly couples browsed shelves. A young mother read to her toddler. A fisherman checked the weather on the public computer. Nobody knew. Nobody could see that the quiet old man in the corner with the nautical book was counting the minutes until his daughter arrived to help him survive his own son. Sam's silver Honda pulled into my driveway at 1:22 in the afternoon. I know because I checked the clock on the kitchen wall when I heard the tires on gravel. She must have driven 80 the whole way. She was out of the car before the engine fully stopped, crossing the yard in long, urgent strides, and when she reached me at the front door, She pulled me into a hug so tight it hurt. "Dad." She pulled back, searched my face. "You're scaring me. Tell me everything." I had laid it all out on the kitchen table. The sealed evidence bag with the counterfeit pills. My old metformin bottle for comparison. The photographs I had taken that morning, close-ups of the deck railing bolt holes, empty and clean. The gas valve behind the stove. The cut cable end I had saved in a Ziploc bag. And Dorothy's leather notebook where I had written dates, times, descriptions of every incident. Sam approached the table slowly. She picked up each piece, examined it, set it down. Her face transformed as she worked through the evidence, from worried daughter to something harder, something professional. She picked up the sealed bag and held the pills to the window light. "You said Margaret identified these as sulfonylurea?" Sam asked. Her voice flat and clinical now, based on symptoms. She said, "A lab would need to confirm." Sam nodded. "The symptoms you described, dizziness, blurred vision, tremor, metallic taste, those are textbook hypoglycemic indicators. Sulfonylurea forces insulin production regardless of glucose levels. In a type 2 diabetic already managing with metformin, adding sulfonylurea at an uncontrolled dose would crash your blood sugar catastrophically." She set the bag down. "Margaret's right. 7 to 10 days and you would have gone hypoglycemic in your sleep. Fatal without immediate intervention." She turned to face me. Her eyes were red, but her jaw was set. Dorothy's jaw. Dorothy's steel. "Dad, someone is trying to kill you." Hearing it from Sam, from my daughter who dealt in medical facts and clinical certainty, made it more real than anything Margaret had said. More real than the empty bolt holes or the cut cable. This was not paranoia. This was diagnosis. "How did we get here?" I said, and my voice broke on the last word. "How did Kyle become this?" Sam closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, the tears she had been holding back slipped down her cheeks. She wiped them away with the back of her hand, a quick, impatient gesture, then squared her shoulders. "We can grieve later, Dad. Right now we need help. Professional help." She pulled out her phone. "North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation. They have a unit that handles elder abuse and crimes against vulnerable adults." "Sam, I'm not. Dad. Firm. Final. Someone tampered with your medication. Someone sabotaged your property. This is attempted murder. We are calling law enforcement. Now." I nodded. Because she was right. Because Dorothy would have said the same thing. Because I was 69 years old and living alone on a cliff, and the person trying to push me off it was my own blood. Sam dialed. I listened to the ringing. Then the click of connection. "North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation. How may I direct your call?" "Elder Abuse and Vulnerable Persons Unit, please." A series of transfers. Then a male voice, calm and professional. "SBI. Elder Crimes Division. This is Agent Morales." Sam took a breath. "Agent Morales. My name is Dr. Samantha Brennan. My father is 69 years old. Lives alone on a coastal property in Dare County. We have evidence of multiple incidents of property sabotage and medication tampering. We believe a family member is responsible." A pause. "Is your father in immediate danger?" "Not at this moment. But the incidents have been escalating over the past 2 weeks. Can you come into the Manteo office tomorrow morning?" Sam looked at me. I shook my head. Mouthed. "Here. Is there any way you could come to us?" The property itself is evidence. Seeing it in context would help. Another pause. "I can be there Friday morning, 9 o'clock. Can you send me the address and a brief summary by email tonight?" "Yes." "Thank you." Sam ended the call, set her phone on the table beside the evidence. Then she sat down next to me and took my hand. Her fingers were cold from the drive, but her grip was strong. "Friday," she said. 2 days. We keep the doors locked, we don't take any medication without verifying it, and we don't tell Kyle anything. Can you do that? I looked at the photograph on the wall above the kitchen table. Dorothy and me on our wedding day, 1981, standing on the beach at Nag's Head with the ocean behind us and the wind making a mess of her veil. She was laughing. She was always laughing in those early years. I'm going to protect what you love, Dot, I said quietly. Even if it means losing our son. Sam squeezed my hand. She'd want you safe, Dad. Above everything else. She'd want you alive. I nodded. And we sat there together as the afternoon light faded and the ocean turned dark outside the windows, waiting for Friday, waiting for help, waiting for whatever came next. Agent Dan Morales came to the house that Friday morning as promised. He was in his late 40s, broad-shouldered, with a calm, deliberate manner that reminded me of the old-time commercial fishermen who worked the banks when I was young. Men who never rushed, never panicked, but missed nothing. He examined the property, photographed the deck, the gas valve, the cable, took the sealed pill bag as evidence, interviewed me for 2 hours, and left saying he would be in touch. 5 days later, he returned. It was a Tuesday afternoon, early December. Rain streaking the windows in gray sheets. Sam had stayed with me since that first night, sleeping in the guest room, working remotely from her laptop at the kitchen table. She had not left my side, and I had not asked her to. When Morales pulled into the drive, I watched him get out of his unmarked sedan. He carried a folder under his arm, thicker than before. Much thicker. His expression was serious in a way it had not been during his first visit. Something had changed. He sat at the kitchen table, accepted a cup of coffee, and set the folder between us. Mr. Brennan. Dr. Brennan. He looked at each of us in turn. There's someone else involved in this. Someone I need you to know about. And what I'm going to tell you changes the scope of this case significantly. I felt my stomach tighten. Sam leaned forward, her hands wrapped around her coffee mug. Morales opened the folder and slid a photograph across the table. A man, mid to late 40s. Dark hair graying at the temples, tanned skin, sharp jaw. He wore a tailored suit in the photo, standing beside a yacht. His smile was wide and practiced. The smile of a man who sold things for a living. This is Victor Hale, Morales said. 48 years old. Resident of Miami, Florida. On the surface, he presents himself as a luxury real estate developer specializing in coastal resort properties. He pulled out a second sheet. A criminal background summary, with entries running down the page like a rap sheet in a bad movie. In reality, Hale has been under federal investigation for 4 years. Money laundering through shell companies, wire fraud, tax evasion. He buys coastal properties through intermediaries, builds resort complexes, and uses the construction contracts and rental income to launder money for a network we're still mapping. FBI has a case building, but Hale is careful. Layers between himself and the dirty money. What does he have to do with Kyle? I asked, though something in my gut already knew. Morales pulled out a calendar page marked with highlighter. June 14th of this year. A coastal real estate networking event in Wilmington. Featured speakers included Victor Hale presenting on, quote, creative financing solutions for distressed property acquisitions. Your son attended that event. Sam's jaw tightened. Distressed property acquisitions, meaning properties owned by people in financial trouble, or people whose families are in financial trouble, Morales said. Hale's pattern is consistent. He identifies men in their 30s and 40s who have business failures, debt problems, gambling issues, men who are desperate. He befriends them, offers solutions, pulls them deeper into dependency, and then directs them toward criminal activity. He laid out phone records, pages of call logs between Kyle's cell number and a Miami area code. Since June 14th, 212 documented communications between your son and Victor Hale. June was light, maybe twice a week. By September, it was daily. By November, multiple times a day. Morales pulled out printed text message transcripts. These were obtained by warrant from Kyle's carrier. He laid them out chronologically. The first was dated June 28th. From Hale to Kyle. Enjoyed meeting you at the conference. Let's talk about that coastal parcel you mentioned. I might have a solution for your cash flow situation. Drinks this weekend? July 15th. Hale to Kyle. Brought you into the Riverside game. Think of it as networking. These guys can connect you with capital. Riverside. I did not know what that meant yet. But Morales explained. An illegal high-stakes poker operation in a warehouse outside Wilmington, run by associates of Hale's laundering network. A honey trap designed to create debt. August 3rd. Kyle to Hale. Down another 40. I can't keep doing this. Need to stop. Hale's response. Same day. You're in too deep to stop now. But I have a way to clear your slate. That property your father's sitting on. Let's talk. My hands were trembling. Sam reached over and placed her palm flat on my forearm. Steady. Present. September 12th. Hale to Kyle. You owe $650,000. My associates are not patient men. You know what happens if you can't pay. But your father's land solves everything. $9 million split means we both walk away clean. October 2nd. Kyle to Hale. He won't sell. I've tried. He's stubborn. Hale's reply. Then we make him unable to refuse. Or unable to refuse anything at all. Get creative. I'll send you what you need. November 1st. Hale to Kyle. Package arriving Thursday. Instructions inside. Start with the property. Make it look like negligence. Old man, bad maintenance. Work up to the medication. Slow and steady. I closed my eyes. The words blurred. My son receiving instructions on how to kill me, delivered like a business plan. Step by step. Methodical. Professional. The final text Morales showed us was dated November 20th. From Hale to Kyle. Get the old man's signature, or get him out of the way. I don't care which. You have. Until New Year's. After that, my people handle it their way. And they won't be subtle. The rain hammered against the windows. The ocean was invisible behind sheets of gray. I stared at Victor Hale's photograph, at that yacht club smile, and tried to reconcile what I was seeing with the reality of my life. A stranger in Miami had looked at my land and seen dollar signs, had found my desperate son, and turned him into a weapon aimed at my chest. So Kyle didn't think of this alone, I said. My voice sounded far away. No, Morales said. Victor Hale orchestrated this. He identified your son as a vulnerable target, manufactured debt to create leverage, then directed the plan. But Mr. Brennan, he met my eyes. Your son is 42 years old. He received those instructions and he followed them. He tampered with your medication. He sabotaged your property. Hale opened the door, but Kyle walked through it. I knew he was right. Hale was the architect, but Kyle had swung the hammer. What happens now? Sam asked. We're coordinating with the FBI on Hale. When we move on Kyle, we move on Hale simultaneously. Coordinated arrests, so neither can warn the other. He paused. But first, we need Kyle here. On your property. On camera. Doing something we can prosecute beyond doubt. He's coming for Christmas, I said quietly. I invited him weeks ago. Before I knew any of this, Morales nodded. Then, we let him come. And we catch him. I looked at the photograph of Victor Hale one more time. Then at the text messages spread across my kitchen table. My son's words in black and white. His plan laid bare. My son was drowning. And instead of calling for help, he had tried to drag me under with him. The next morning, Morales returned with a white van and 2 technicians. No markings on the van, no uniforms on the men. They could have been cable installers or pest control. That was the point. 6 cameras, Morales said, spreading a floor plan of my house across the kitchen table. He had drawn it himself from his Friday visit. Every room marked. Every angle noted. 2 in the main living areas. One covering the deck and railing, one in the boathouse loft, one on the dock, and one on the exterior facing the driveway. All wireless, all motion-activated, all recording to a cloud server we monitor in real time from our field office in Manteo. I watched the technicians work. They were efficient and quiet, hiding cameras in places I never would have thought to look. Inside the smoke detector, casing in the living room, behind a decorative buoy on the shelf near the deck door, in the eaves of the boathouse, angled to capture anyone climbing the ladder to the loft, tucked into the weathered planking of the dock railing. Within an hour, my home was wired for surveillance, and you could not tell by looking. Audio too? Sam asked, arms crossed, watching from the doorway. Full audio on the interior units. Legal in North Carolina, with property owner consent, which Mr. Brennan has provided. Morales turned to me. From this point on, every word spoken in this house is recorded. Every movement captured. If Kyle does anything, says anything, touches anything he should not, we will have it. After the technicians left, Morales sat down with us one more time. He pulled out a single sheet of paper from his folder. State Toxicology Lab letterhead. The pill analysis came back this morning, he said. I wanted to deliver this in person. I braced myself. Sam straightened in her chair. The pills contained glipizide, a sulfonylurea, at 20 milligrams per tablet. Standard therapeutic dose for a diabetic patient is 5 milligrams, carefully titrated under medical supervision. He looked at me. You were taking 4 times the maximum recommended dose, without the balancing effect of food timing and monitoring that a prescribed regimen would include. Sam's face went pale. 20 milligrams unmonitored. That would cause insulin levels to spike uncontrollably. Correct. The lab's conclusion is definitive. Continued ingestion for 7 to 10 days would result in recurrent severe hypoglycemic episodes, progressing to hypoglycemic coma, most likely occurring during sleep between 2 and 5 in the morning when blood sugar naturally dips. Death would follow within hours without emergency glucose intervention. He paused. Let it settle. In a 69-year-old male with existing type 2 diabetes, the coroner would find no evidence of foul play. Standard autopsy would conclude diabetic complications, leading to hypoglycemic coma and death. Natural causes. Case closed. The words hung in the kitchen like something toxic. I thought about waking up dizzy those 2 mornings. Thought about the metallic taste on my tongue. Thought about how close I had come to not waking up at all. Unless someone specifically suspected poisoning and ordered advanced toxicological screening, Sam said quietly, it would have been undetectable. Exactly, Morales said. This was designed to be invisible. Whoever prepared these pills knew pharmacology, knew your father's condition, knew the detection limitations of standard postmortem examination. Hale, Sam said. Hale has connections to a chemist in his network who has been linked to 2 other suspicious deaths in Florida. We believe the pills were manufactured to specification and shipped to Kyle with instructions. I stood up, walked to the window. The ocean was calm today. Blue-gray, under a high, pale sky. Peaceful, indifferent. It did not care that 60 feet away, cameras were watching my house because my son was coming to finish what those pills had started. What do I need to do? I asked, without turning around. Call Kyle, Morales said. Confirm Christmas. Be warm. Be friendly. Give him absolutely no reason to think anything has changed. When he arrives, you act like a father, happy to see his son. You eat dinner together. You open presents. You let him believe he is in control. And if he tries something while he's here, he will. Based on the texts, Hale gave him a deadline. New Year's. If your property is not secured by then, Hale's people take over. Kyle is under enormous pressure to act during this visit. Morales leaned forward. When he makes his move, we will have it on camera. Clear, undeniable evidence of intent, combined with the pill analysis, the text messages, the financial records, and the prior sabotage documentation, the case will be airtight. And you'll be nearby? A surveillance unit will be positioned in a rental property half a mile down the beach road. Close enough to reach you in under 2 minutes, if we see anything dangerous in real time. You will never be truly alone. I nodded slowly, turned back from the window. Okay, I'll call him. One more thing. Morales stood. Dr. Brennan, I need you to be here too. But naturally. Don't arrive with your father. Come separately. A day later, maybe. Make it look unplanned. Sam nodded. I'll say I had time off for the holidays and decided to visit. Perfect. Morales packed his folder. Mr. Brennan, I know this is the hardest thing anyone has ever asked you to do. Sitting across from your son at Christmas dinner, knowing what you know, but it's the only way to end this cleanly, to protect you permanently, to make sure he cannot try again. After Morales left, I stood at the kitchen counter staring at my phone. Kyle's number on the screen. I thought about the last time I had called this number in hope. In November, after the birthday dinner, trying to reach him, trying to understand. Now I was calling him as bait. I pressed dial. It rang 3 times. Dad? Kyle's voice. Warm. Surprised. That practiced warmth that I now understood was rehearsed. Hey, what's up? Hi, son. I forced lightness into my voice. Forced my jaw to unclench. Just calling to see if you and Lisa are still planning to come for Christmas. Want to make sure I stock the fridge right. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we're all set. Kids are so excited. Megan keeps asking if she can look for shells on the beach. Of course she can. Tell her grandpa will take her to the sand dollar spot. That's great, Dad. Really great. A pause. Then, softer. I'm glad we're doing this. It means a lot. Me too, son. Me too. We'll drive down the 23rd. Should get there by dinner. I'll have something ready. You still like my crab cakes? Kyle laughed. It sounded real. It sounded like my son. Best on the banks, Dad. Can't wait. We hung up. I set the phone on the counter carefully, as if it might detonate. Sam was standing in the doorway, arms crossed, her face a mask of controlled fury. You did great, Dad. I shook my head. My son wished me Merry Christmas, in the same voice he would use to wish me goodbye forever. And I just smiled and talked about crab cakes. Sam crossed the room and hugged me. 12 more days. Then, it's over. 12 days. 12 days of waiting. 12 days of knowing what was coming. 12 days until my son walked through my door carrying gifts for his children and murder in his heart. December 23rd came the way storms come to the Outer Banks. You see them building on the horizon for days. Watch them grow closer. Feel the pressure change in your bones. But when they finally arrive, the violence of it still catches you off guard. I was standing at the kitchen window at 4:15 in the afternoon when I saw the black Lexus appear at the far end of my drive. The winter sun hung low over Pamlico Sound behind the house, and its light caught the windshield as the car crested the last dune. For a moment, the whole vehicle seemed to be on fire. My hands were steady. I had practiced this. 12 days of rehearsing normalcy in the mirror. Smiling. Relaxing my shoulders. Unclenching my jaw. 12 days of reminding myself that the cameras were watching, that Morales was half a mile away. That all I had to do was act like a father happy to see his son. The car pulled up beside the house, engine off, doors opening, and then there they were, my family, stepping out into the salt wind like a Christmas card come to life. Kyle came around the front of the car first. He looked good, rested, clean-shaven, wearing a navy peacoat I had never seen before. His smile was wide and warm, and it hit me like a fist because it looked real. It looked like my son, Dad. He crossed the yard in 3 long strides and pulled me into a hug. I made myself return it. made my arms close around his back, made my body not stiffen, not recoil, not betray the revulsion that churned in my stomach at his touch. He smelled like cologne and car air freshener, and underneath it something sour. Fear, maybe. Or guilt. Or nothing at all. Good to see you, son. The words tasted like ash. Lisa came next. Thinner than the birthday dinner, dark circles under her eyes barely concealed by makeup. She hugged me gently, a fragile embrace, and murmured, "Thanks for having us, Tom." She called me Tom. Had never called me Walt. I did not correct her. Then the children. Jack tumbled out of the back seat with 5-year-old energy, immediately distracted by a seagull landing on the porch railing. But Megan walked straight to me, 8 years old and serious, and wrapped her arms around my waist without a word. She pressed her face against my chest and held on. "Hi, Grandpa," she said, muffled against my flannel. "I missed you." I had to close my eyes. Had to breathe through the ache that split my chest wide open. This child had no idea. No idea that in 3 days her father would be in handcuffs. No idea that the man who tucked her in at night had put poison in her grandfather's medicine. "I missed you too, sweetheart," I said. "So much." They settled in. I showed them to the guest rooms, helped carry bags. Kyle moved through the house with a familiarity that made my skin crawl, now that I knew what those hands had done. He touched the walls, ran his palm along the banister, looked out each window with an expression I once would have called nostalgia but now recognized as appraisal. Sam arrived an hour later, right on schedule. Pulled up in her Honda, overnight bag, over her shoulder, acting perfectly surprised to find Kyle's family already there. "Oh, Kyle." She set her bag down in the hallway, her voice light and natural. "Dad didn't mention you were coming. Surprise visit," Kyle said. His smile dimmed slightly, a tightness around his eyes. He had not expected Sam. I could see the calculation working behind his expression. Adjusting variables. Recalculating risk. "You didn't drive all the way from Wilmington for Christmas? Had some time off. Figured Dad shouldn't be alone for the holidays." She hugged him. Brief, controlled. "Good to see you." "You too," Kyle said. But his voice had cooled by a degree. Dinner was a performance. I made crab cakes, coleslaw, cornbread. We sat around the kitchen table while the wind rattled the windows and the ocean boomed against the bluff below. Megan talked about school. Jack knocked over his milk. Lisa helped me clear plates with that exhausted smile. Normal. All of it perfectly. Agonizingly normal. After the children were in bed, the adults sat in the living room. Kyle nursed a bourbon. Lisa excused herself early, claiming a headache. Sam made small talk about her practice, asked Kyle about work. He was vague. Restructuring. New opportunities. Irons in the fire. At 9:30, Kyle stood. "Think I'll check the deck rails before the kids start running around out there tomorrow." Noticed a couple looked loose when we came in. Every muscle in my body went rigid. The deck rails. The same ones I had rebolted after the first incident. The ones the camera was pointed directly at. "My back's been acting up," I said. Exactly as Morales had coached me. "Appreciate you looking. Just be careful in the dark." "No problem, Dad." "Won't take long." He went outside. I sat frozen in my chair. Sam was beside me on the couch, her phone in her hand, her thumb hovering over the screen. 5 minutes passed. 7. 10. Kyle came back and brushing his hands together, a satisfied look on his face. "All good." Tightened a couple that were working loose. "Should be safe for the kids." "Thank you, son." He patted my shoulder as he passed. "Night, Dad." "Merry Christmas Eve." He laughed at his own joke and went upstairs. Sam's phone buzzed silently. She looked down, then tilted the screen toward me. A text from Morales. Camera 4 captured everything. He loosened 3 bolts on the south railing section. Did not tighten. Confirm attempted sabotage. Evidence secured. I exhaled. Felt nothing. No relief. No anger. Just a vast, empty cold, like the ocean in January. At 11, I went to bed. Locked my bedroom door. Lay on top of the covers, fully dressed. Staring at the ceiling. Listening to the house settle around me. The wind had picked up, rattling the shutters. Below the bluff, the waves crashed in their endless rhythm. Sam was in the room next door. Morales was watching through 6 cameras. I was not alone. But at 2:14 in the morning, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Soft. Careful. The creak of the old floorboard outside my door, third plank from the bathroom, the one that always complained under weight. I knew this house the way a captain knows his vessel. Every sound mapped in my memory. The footsteps stopped. Right outside my room. I lay perfectly still. Controlled my breathing. Slow. Deep. Even. The way you breathe when you are asleep. The way a man breathes when he has no idea someone is standing 3 feet away with intentions no father should ever have to imagine. Through the crack beneath the door, a shadow. Someone standing there. Listening. Waiting. Checking if I was awake. Checking if I was vulnerable. 10 seconds. 20. A lifetime compressed into the space between heartbeats. Then the shadow moved. The footsteps retreated. A door closed softly down the hall. I lay there in the dark. Eyes wide. Heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. My son had stood outside my locked door in the middle of the night. My son had checked to see if his father was sleeping deeply enough. Deeply enough for what? I did not want to know. I did not sleep after the footsteps. Just lay there watching the ceiling lighten by degrees as the night slowly bled into dawn. At 4 in the morning I gave up pretending and went downstairs. The Christmas tree stood in the living room corner near the window, overlooking the ocean. Megan and Jack had decorated it the evening before, dragging ornaments from the box in the hall closet. Dorothy's ornaments. Glass balls she had collected from craft fairs over 30 years. Handmade angels with silk wings. A carved wooden lighthouse I had given her on our 10th anniversary. The children had hung them with the haphazard joy of youth, clusters near the bottom where small hands could reach, gaps near the top where they could not. I sat in Dorothy's armchair in the dark and watched the lights blink. Red, green, gold, blue, slow, and rhythmic, like a heartbeat, like a signal. Dorothy had loved Christmas with a fierceness that bordered on religious. She started planning in October. Baked cookies for every neighbor within 5 miles. Strung lights along the porch railing until the house glowed like a beacon visible from the water. She believed Christmas was sacred ground. A time when truth was supposed to matter more than any other day of the year. Christmas is for truth, Walt, she used to say. Even the hard kind. The hard kind. I looked at the tree my grandchildren had decorated with their dead grandmother's ornaments, in a house their father was trying to steal from me. The hard kind did not begin to cover it. Morning came with the chaos of children. Jack was first down the stairs at 6:30, bare feet thundering, shouting that Santa had come. Megan followed with more dignity but equal excitement. They tore into presents with that beautiful, single-minded intensity that only children possess. Paper flew. Ribbons curled across the floor. Jack got a remote-control boat he immediately wanted to take to the beach. Megan received a watercolor set and a book about marine biology that made her eyes go wide. Kyle was beside them on the floor, cross-legged, handing out gifts, reading tags aloud, laughing when Jack tried to wear a bow as a hat. He looked like a good father, looked like the man I had wanted him to be. And that was the cruelest part. He could be this. He had this in him, this warmth, this gentleness with his children. But somewhere beneath it lived something else entirely. He handed me a gift wrapped in blue paper. For you, Dad. Merry Christmas. I opened it with steady hands. A framed photograph I had never seen before. Kyle and me, on the Dorothy May. When he was about 10, I was at the wheel, Kyle standing beside me on a step stool to see over the console, both of us squinting into the sun. We were laughing. I could not remember what about. Found it in some old boxes at home, Kyle said softly. Thought you should have it. I stared at the photograph. At that boy. At the joy on both our faces. And I wanted to scream at him. Wanted to shake him and say, "What happened to us? What happened to you? How can you give me this with one hand?" And loosen the bolts on my railing with the other. "Thank you," I said instead. "It's perfect." After breakfast, Kyle announced he was going outside to finish checking the deck hardware. "Want to make sure everything's solid before the kids are running around today," he said, pulling on his jacket. "You know how Jack is. No fear." Sam and I sat at the kitchen table as he went outside. Through the window I could see him moving along the south railing, crouching at each post. His back was to us, but I knew what the camera was recording. The same thing it had recorded last night. Not tightening, loosening. Creating failure points that would give way under pressure. Under my weight, specifically, if I leaned against that rail the way I did every evening to watch the sunset. He came back in 15 minutes later, rubbing his hands against the cold. All set. Tightened everything up. Safe as houses. "Appreciate it, son," I said. My voice did not waver. I was getting better at this. Getting better at lying to my child the way he lied to me. Christmas lunch was Dorothy's menu. Honey-glazed ham, sweet potato casserole, collard greens, cornbread, pecan pie. I cooked it all myself, starting at 7 that morning while the house still smelled of wrapping paper and coffee. It felt like honoring her. Like keeping her present at a table where her absence was the loudest thing in the room. We sat down at 1 o'clock. The children were giddy. Lisa looked slightly less exhausted, a faint color in her cheeks that had not been there yesterday. Sam helped me serve, moving around the kitchen with the ease of someone who had grown up in it. Kyle stood at the head of the table. He had poured wine for the adults, juice for the children. He lifted his glass, and that warm smile spread across his face like sunrise over water. "To family," he said. "To being together. To keeping Dad safe and healthy. For many more Christmases to come." Everyone raised their glasses. I raised mine. Touched it to my lips. Did not swallow. Could not swallow. The irony was so thick, it could choke a man. Keeping Dad safe. From the man proposing the toast, Sam's phone buzzed in her pocket during dessert. She glanced at it casually, excused herself to use the bathroom. When she came back, she squeezed past my chair, and her hand found my shoulder. One firm press. A massage. Later, after the children had crashed from their sugar highs, and Kyle and Lisa were watching a movie in the living room, Sam found me in the kitchen drying dishes. She leaned close. Her whisper was barely audible above the sound of running water. Morales confirmed. Camera footage from this morning. Kyle loosened 4 bolts on the south rail. Same section he did last night. 2 separate instances of sabotage now captured. Combined with the pills and the texts, it's more than enough. I kept drying the plate in my hands. Slow circles. Methodical. Arrest is scheduled for December 26th. 6 in the morning. Morales wants 1 more day of footage in case Kyle does anything additional. FBI will move on Hale in Miami simultaneously. I nodded. Set the plate on the shelf. Picked up another. 36 hours, Dad, Sam said. That's all. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I went back downstairs. The house was dark, except for the Christmas tree lights still blinking in their slow rhythm. I sat beside the tree and pulled out 2 small packages I had hidden in the hall closet. Gifts for Megan and Jack that I had bought weeks ago and saved for last. For Megan, a necklace with a tiny silver dolphin pendant. For Jack, a wooden boat carved by a craftsman in Manteo, hand-painted blue and white. I set them gently beneath the tree. Tomorrow morning they would find them. They would smile and say thank you, and have no idea that it was the last normal morning of their childhood. In 36 hours, their father would be in handcuffs. And I was the one who had put him there. I was the reason their world would shatter. The right reason. The necessary reason. But still, I was the one. I touched the carved boat with my fingertip. Thought about Kyle at 5, floating sticks in the tide pools, calling them his fleet. Thought about Megan at 3, reaching for dolphins that surfaced near the shore. "I'm sorry," I whispered to the tree, to the ornaments Dorothy had collected, to the children sleeping upstairs who did not deserve any of this. "I'm so sorry it came to this." The lights blinked on. Red, green, gold, blue. On and on and on. Asking nothing. Offering nothing. Just marking time until morning. Christmas night. The house was full of sleeping people. And I was the only one awake. The only one who knew what morning would bring. I lay on my bed fully clothed. Boots beside the mattress. Listening. The ocean was restless tonight. Heavy swells rolling in from the northeast. Slamming against the base of the bluff with a rhythm like slow artillery. The house creaked around me, the way it always did in high wind, cedar joints flexing, window frames whistling softly. Sounds I had known for 40 years. Sounds that should have been comfort. But tonight every sound was a question. Every creak a footstep. Every whistle a whisper. At midnight I gave up lying still. Sat on the edge of the bed and checked my phone. A text from Morales. Sent at 11:59. Units in position. No movement from subject since 2200. Arrest team. Arriving at 05:30. Remain in your room until contacted. Remain in my room. Like a prisoner in my own house. Like the victim they kept telling me I was. I could not stay in that bed. Could not lie there for 5 more hours counting waves and waiting for dawn. I needed to move. Needed to feel the house around me. Needed to remind myself why I was doing this. I opened my bedroom door slowly. The hallway was dark except for the faint glow of a nightlight Sam had plugged in near the bathroom for the children. I moved in my socks, silent on the old hardwood. Muscle memory guiding me around the boards that creaked, downstairs. The living room lay in blue darkness, the Christmas tree lights finally off. But enough moonlight came through the ocean-facing windows to see by. Silver light painting the furniture, the bookshelves, the mantel above the fireplace where Dorothy's photographs lined up in their frames. I stood before the mantel and looked at her. Our wedding day. Young. Laughing. The wind making a mess of everything. Beside it, Dorothy at 40, standing on the bluff with the ocean behind her, arms crossed, smiling like she owned the world. Which she did. At least this piece of it. Tomorrow, I said softly. Tomorrow they take him. And I don't know how to live with that. I don't know how to be his father and his accuser at the same time. Dorothy's photograph smiled back. Fixed. Silent. But I could hear her anyway. The way I always could. You do it because you have to. Because staying alive is not selfish. Because these walls deserve to stand. Because those children upstairs deserve a grandfather who is breathing. I touched the frame. I miss you. Every day. But especially tonight. I climbed the stairs again. Past the guest room where Sam slept behind a closed door. Past the bathroom with its nightlight glow. And then I stopped. Kyle's door. Closed. Beyond it, silence. But not the silence of an empty room. The silence of a person sleeping. Breathing. Existing. I stood there and listened to my son's sleep. Heard the faint rhythm of his breathing through the wood, slow and even. Peaceful. The way a man sleeps when his conscience does not trouble him, or when he has learned to silence it completely. 42 years ago, I had stood outside a nursery door just like this, listening to him breathe as a newborn. One hand on the doorframe, heart full to bursting with a love so fierce it frightened me. I had stood there and whispered, I will protect you from everything. I promise. Now I was the one who needed protection. From him. And tomorrow, I would be the one to end his freedom. The symmetry was so cruel, it felt almost elegant. I moved on. Down the hall to the last room. The children's room. The door was open a crack. The way Megan liked it because she was still slightly afraid of the dark, though she would never admit it. I pushed it open an inch more and looked in. Moonlight fell across two small beds. Jack lay sprawled on his back. Arms flung wide, mouth open. Completely abandoned to sleep the way only young children can be. His wooden boat, my Christmas gift, sat on the nightstand beside him. Already treasured. Megan was curled on her side, facing the window, her silver dolphin necklace glinting at her throat. She had not taken it off since opening it that morning. One arm wrapped around a stuffed sea turtle. Her breathing was soft and steady. I watched them for a long time. These small, perfect people who had done nothing wrong, who loved their father, who loved their grandfather, who would wake up tomorrow to a world split in half, and no amount of love from either side would make it whole again. I went back to my room and sat at the small desk by the window. Pulled out a sheet of paper from the drawer. Dorothy's stationery, cream-colored with a faint watermark of a seashell in the corner. I had never used it, had kept it because it smelled faintly of her perfume. I picked up a pen and began to write. Dear Megan and Jack, by the time you are old enough to read this and understand it, many years will have passed. You will have questions that nobody can answer easily. I want you to know some things that are true, no matter what else you learn or are told. I wrote for an hour. Told them about Dorothy, about this land, about the ocean and what it teaches you about patience and strength. Told them their father loved them even if he made terrible choices. Told them this house would always be theirs. Told them I loved them in a way that did not have conditions or limits or expiration dates. I folded the letter and sealed it in an envelope, wrote their names on the front, placed it in my desk drawer beneath Dorothy's old nautical almanac. Then I returned to the window and waited. The sky was still black at 5 o'clock. By 5:15, the first gray appeared at the horizon, the ocean separating itself from the sky by the thinnest margin. At 5:28, I saw them. Headlights. 3 sets. Moving slowly down the beach road from the north. No sirens, no flashers. Just lights moving through the darkness, like ships approaching harbor. They turned onto my drive at 5:31. The gravel crunched beneath their tires, barely audible above the wind and surf. They parked in a line near the boathouse. Engines off. Doors opening and closing with professional quiet. I watched Agent Morales step out of the lead vehicle. Behind him, 4 officers from the Dare County Sheriff's Department. They gathered briefly in the pre-dawn cold, breath pluming white, then moved toward the house in formation. I went downstairs, unlocked the front door, opened it before Morales could knock. He stood on my porch in the gray light, badge clipped to his jacket, his face calm and focused. Behind him, the officers waited. Mr. Brennan, he said quietly, we're ready. I stepped aside. Let them in. And the longest night of my life was finally, mercifully, over. 6:02 in the morning. I know because my eyes found the clock on the kitchen wall the moment Morales stepped through my door, and the numbers burned into my memory the way certain moments do. The moment you hear a diagnosis. The moment a phone rings at 3 in the morning. The moment the world divides permanently into before and after. Morales moved through my house with quiet efficiency. 2 officers remained at the front door. 2 more positioned themselves at the base of the stairs. Morales climbed, each step measured, avoiding the 3rd plank that creaked. He knew. He had memorized this house the same way I had. Sam appeared at the top of the staircase. Already dressed, already awake. She must have heard the cars. Her face was pale in the gray light, but her jaw was set, and she gave me one small nod before stepping to the side, pressing herself against the wall to let Morales pass. I stayed at the bottom of the stairs. My hand found the newel post and gripped it. Oak. Solid. 100 years old. Something to hold on to. Morales reached the landing. Turned left. Stopped at the second door. I heard him raise his hand. 3 soft knocks. Kyle Brennan. His voice was calm, authoritative, not unkind. This is Agent Dan Morales, North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation. I need you to open the door. Silence. 2 heartbeats. 3. Then a muffled sound. Bed springs. Footsteps. The click of a doorknob turning. What? Kyle's voice, thick with sleep. Confused. What's going on? Kyle Brennan. I have a warrant for your arrest. You are charged with attempted murder in the 1st degree, tampering with prescription medication, and criminal conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. The words echoed down the stairwell. Clean and final, as a blade dropping. What? Kyle's voice climbed, sharpened. What are you talking about? This is crazy. Dad? I heard scuffling. Footsteps in the hallway. Then Kyle appeared at the top of the stairs in a white undershirt and sweatpants, hair wild, face twisted between disbelief and panic. His eyes found mine at the bottom of the staircase and locked on. Dad! His voice cracked. Raw. Desperate. Dad! What is this? Tell them this is a mistake. I looked up at my son. At the face that used to light up when I came through the door after a day on the water. At the eyes that used to follow me with worship when I showed him how to tie a bowline or bait a hook. At the man those eyes had become. It's not a mistake, I said. My voice was steady. I did not know where the steadiness came from, only that it was there. I know about the pills, Kyle. I know about the deck. I know about Victor Hale. His face drained. Every drop of color fell away, as if someone had pulled a plug. His mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. No. He whispered. No, Dad. You don't understand. I can explain. It's not what you think. I didn't want. Turn around, Mr. Brennan. One of the officers stepped forward from behind Morales. Firm, but not rough. Kyle did not move. His eyes stayed locked on mine, wide and wet and frantic. Dad, please. I'm your son. Please, don't let them do this. I'll explain everything. Just give me 5 minutes. Please, turn around, the officer repeated, and then the screaming started. Lisa appeared at the end of the hallway in her robe, face flushed, eyes wild with confusion and the raw terror of being woken to this. Kyle? What's happening? What are they doing? Tom? Her voice hit notes I had never heard from her before. High and breaking and full of a fear that went beyond surprise into something primal. Someone tell me what is happening. Kyle turned his head toward her. Lisa, it's okay. It's a misunderstanding. Just call Marcus. Call the lawyer. Tell him. Mr. Brennan. Turn around. Now. The officer's voice carried an edge of finality. Kyle turned. Slowly. Like a man turning away from the last thing he will ever see. The officer pulled his arms behind his back. The handcuffs closed with a metallic click that filled the stairwell like a gunshot. That sound. I will hear that sound for the rest of my life. Then the children. Small voices. Small faces appearing behind Lisa in the hallway, crumpled with sleep and fear. Mommy. Megan's voice. Tiny and trembling. Why are they taking Daddy? Jack pressed against Lisa's leg. Silent. Thumb in his mouth. Eyes enormous. Sam moved fast. She came from her position against the wall and knelt before the children, blocking their view of their father in handcuffs. Her voice was soft, controlled, warm. Hey guys. Come with Aunt Sam, okay? Let's go downstairs. I'll make pancakes. You like pancakes, right, Jack? Jack nodded, still silent. Megan resisted for a moment, trying to see past Sam, trying to understand. But Sam took their hands gently and guided them toward the back staircase, away from the scene, away from the truth they were too young to carry. The officers walked Kyle down the main stairs. His head was bowed, his shoulders shaking. I pressed myself against the wall to let them pass. As he reached the bottom, level with me, he stopped. The officers paused. Kyle lifted his head. His face was wet, tears and snot, and something that looked like collapse, like a building coming down from the inside. "Dad." His voice was barely there. "He made me. Hale. He threatened Lisa and the kids. Said he'd hurt them if I didn't. I was trying to protect my family. I didn't want to hurt you. I swear. I didn't want any of this." I looked at my son, at the tears on his face, at the trembling in his jaw. And part of me, God help me, part of me believed him, believed that somewhere in this wreckage there was still a frightened man who had gotten in too deep and could not find his way out. But the deck bolts, the gas valve, the cable, the pills, each one a choice, each one made in silence, in secret, without once picking up the phone and saying, "Dad, I'm in trouble, help me." "Then you should have told me that," I said quietly. Instead of trying to kill me, his face crumbled. The last light in his eyes went out. The officers guided him forward. Through the living room, past the Christmas tree still hung with Dorothy's ornaments, past the photographs on the mantel, past 40 years of family history mounted on walls he would not see again for a very long time. The front door opened. Cold, salt air rushed in. They walked him across the porch, down the steps, along the gravel path to the waiting patrol car. His bare feet must have been freezing on the stones, but he did not seem to feel it. Did not seem to feel anything anymore. They opened the rear door, guided his head down. He folded into the back seat, and the door closed behind him with a sound like a period at the end of a sentence. I stood on the porch. The wind came off the ocean sharp and clean, carrying salt and cold, and the faintest pink light of dawn rising over the Atlantic. Below the bluff, the waves crashed in their eternal rhythm, indifferent, constant, unchanged by anything that happened in the small lives above them. The patrol car pulled away. Its tires crunched on gravel. Its taillights glowed red in the pre-dawn gray, growing smaller and smaller until they disappeared behind the dune line. Gone. Sam appeared beside me. She did not speak, just stood there, close enough that I could feel the warmth of her shoulder against mine. We watched the empty drive, listened to the ocean, felt the wind push against us the way it always had, and for the first time in 3 months, I took a full breath, drew it deep into my lungs, held it, let it go. The air tasted like salt and winter, and something else, something I had forgotten the flavor of, freedom. 2 hours after the patrol car disappeared, the house fell into a strange, hollow stillness. Lisa sat on the living room sofa, hands wrapped around a mug of tea she had not touched. Her face was the color of the winter sky outside. Pale, flat, drained. Morales sat across from her. I stood by the window. Sam was upstairs, keeping Megan and Jack occupied with watercolors. "Mrs. Brennan," Morales began, "I need you to understand what your husband has been charged with." Lisa's eyes lifted. Glassy. "I don't understand any of this." He laid documents on the coffee table one by one. The sabotage incidents. The toxicology report showing glipizide at 4 times the safe dosage. The video footage of Kyle loosening deck bolts on 2 separate nights. The 212 text messages between Kyle and Victor Hale. He slid one printed message across the table. November 1st. Hale to Kyle. "Start with the property. Make it look like negligence. Work up to the medication." Lisa read it. Her breath came in short, shallow pulls. "Tom, I didn't know. He told me he was working extra hours, trying to save the business. I know, I said quietly. This isn't your fault, Morales explained Victor Hale. The gambling trap, the $650,000 in debt, the threats, the coordinated arrest in Miami 90 minutes ago. Kyle held, without bail. Lisa crumpled forward sobbing. Sam appeared and sat beside her, one arm around her shoulders, holding her while her world tore open. What do I do? Lisa said through her hands. Take your children somewhere safe, Morales said. You are not responsible for his choices. Lisa straightened. Something shifted beneath the shock. Decision forming. My mother's in Norfolk. 2 hours north. We'll leave within the hour. 40 minutes later, bags were loaded. Megan came to me, 8 years old and serious. Grandpa, will you still be here when we come back? I knelt slowly. Always, sweetheart. This house will always be yours, she whispered. Is Daddy a bad man? My throat closed. Your daddy made very bad choices. He hurt people. But he loved you. That part was always real. She hugged me, fierce and brief, then took Jack's hand and walked to the car without looking back. Brave. Like her grandmother. Lisa paused at the door. Thank you, Tom, for not blaming me. Take care of those kids. That's all that matters now. Engine fading. Another car disappearing down my drive. 1 week later, Morales came back. Sam and I were on the deck watching a winter storm build on the horizon. Morales climbed the steps with his folder and an expression I had not seen before. Something heavier than professional concern. Something like grief. Mr. Brennan. There's one more thing. About your wife. The world tilted. Sam's hand found my arm. When we searched Hale's communications going back 5 years, we found something unexpected. He opened the folder. 4 months before Dorothy's death, Victor Hale contacted her directly. 7 calls between a Miami number and your home landline between May and August of that year. I stared at him. Dorothy never mentioned calls from Miami. We found a letter in Hale's seized files. He slid a photocopy across the table. Addressed to Dorothy Brennan. Professional, but aggressive. An offer at $6.2 million, followed by thinly veiled threats about zoning changes and permit complications that could make coastal living untenable. We believe Dorothy refused aggressively, Morales said. A draft response in Hale's files quotes someone telling him to take his threats and shove them into the Atlantic. That was Dorothy. Every word. Agent Morales, Sam said carefully. What are you telling us? Your mother was under significant stress from an unknown source in the months before her cardiac event. Stress she told no one about. Inflicted deliberately by a man who wanted her property. He paused. We cannot charge Hale with murder, but the district attorney is adding criminal harassment resulting in death. 15 additional years. The storm was closer. Rain falling in gray sheets out at sea. Dorothy. My Dorothy. Facing those threats alone. Carrying that weight in silence until her heart could not carry anything anymore. She never told me, I said. My voice broke. She was protecting you, Sam said softly. The way she always did. I gripped the deck railing. The new bolts held firm. Solid. The way everything Dorothy built was solid. Victor Hale had taken my wife from me. Then he had tried to use my son to take everything else. But both of them had underestimated this old man. And this coast. And the woman who had made it strong enough to outlast them all. 3 months later, I sat in the front row of Dare County Courthouse wearing a Navy suit Dorothy had bought me 10 years ago for a friend's retirement dinner. She had knotted the tie herself that morning. Standing behind me in the bathroom mirror. Her chin on my shoulder. You clean up nice, Captain, she had said. I could still feel her fingers adjusting the knot if I concentrated hard enough. The courtroom was small. Wood-paneled walls, fluorescent lights, the seal of North Carolina mounted above the judge's bench. Sam sat beside me, her hand resting on my forearm. Morales was 2 rows back, folder on his lap. Lisa was not there. She had written a victim impact statement but could not face the room. I understood. They brought Kyle in through a side door. He wore an orange jumpsuit that made his skin look gray. He had lost weight. His eyes were sunken, his cheekbones sharp, his hair longer than I had ever seen it. He looked 10 years older than the man who had hugged me on my porch 3 months ago. He did not look at me as they led him to the defense table. Kept his eyes forward. Hands cuffed in front. Chain connecting to a belt at his waist. The sound of it clinking as he walked was the only noise in the courtroom. The judge, a silver-haired woman with reading glasses perched on her nose, reviewed the plea agreement. Kyle had cooperated fully, provided testimony against Victor Hale, detailed every communication, every instruction, every step of the plan. In exchange, the prosecution had reduced the charge from attempted murder in the 1st degree to attempted murder in the 2nd degree. Kyle Thomas Brennan, the judge said, you have pleaded guilty to attempted murder in the 2nd degree, criminal tampering with prescription medication, and conspiracy to commit harm. Under the terms of your plea agreement, this court sentences you to 15 years in the North Carolina Department of Adult Correction. 15 years. Kyle would be 57 when he got out. Almost the age Dorothy was when she died. Kyle stood motionless as the sentence was read. His attorney placed a hand on his shoulder. Kyle did not react, did not flinch, did not cry, just stood there, absorbing it the way the shore absorbs a wave, taking the impact without resistance because resistance would change nothing. The judge continued. Victor Michael Hale, tried in federal court in the Southern District of Florida, has been sentenced to 30 years for money laundering, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, and criminal harassment resulting in death. 30 years. Hale would be 78. He would die in prison. The thought brought me no joy, only a tired acknowledgement that it was finished. Then the judge asked if the defendant wished to make a statement. Kyle's attorney leaned in, whispered something. Kyle shook his head, then stopped, turned. For the first time since entering the courtroom, he looked at me. His eyes were red-rimmed and hollow. His lips pressed together, fighting for control. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. I'm sorry, Dad. A breath. For everything. For Mom. For what I did to you. For what I became. His voice cracked on the last word. I hope someday you can forgive me, but I understand if you can't. The courtroom was silent. I looked at my son, at the ruin of him, at what greed and desperation and a predator named Victor Hale had made of the boy who once steered my boat through the inlet at dawn. I did not speak, could not, but I gave him one small nod. Not forgiveness, not yet, maybe not ever, but acknowledgement. I see you, I hear you. You are still my son, even now, even here. The officers led him away. The side door closed, and Kyle was gone. Sam drove us home. Neither of us spoke for the first 20 minutes. Then, as we crossed the bridge onto the Outer Banks, she said, "It's over, Dad." "Yes," I said, watching the ocean appear through the dune grass. Blue today. Calm, patient. Spring came to the Outer Banks the way it always does. Gradually, then all at once. The water warmed. The birds returned. Pelicans dove for fish in the morning light. Dolphins appeared in pods of 6 and 8, arcing through the surf. The sea oats greened on the dunes. Life returning to a coast that never truly dies, only rests. Sam moved back to the Outer Banks in April. She found a small building in Hatteras Village and opened a family practice clinic. 3 days a week, she saw patients. The other days she spent at the house, helping me maintain the property, walking the bluff at sunset, cooking dinner together the way Dorothy and I used to. "You don't have to do this," I told her one evening. "Give up your career in Wilmington. I'm not giving anything up, she said. I'm choosing something better. In mid-April, I met with an attorney and rewrote my will. 60% of the property would go to Sam, with the condition that the coastal bluff remain undeveloped for at least 25 years. The remaining 40% would be held in trust for Megan and Jack, released when each turned 25. I also deeded 15 acres of the southern section. The stretch of maritime forest and dune habitat that Dorothy had always called her cathedral, to the North Carolina Coastal Land Trust. It would be preserved in perpetuity. Protected from development. Protected from men like Victor Hale forever. They named it Dorothy's Coastal Reserve. The sign went up on a Tuesday morning in May. Simple. Cedar. Like our house. Like everything Dorothy loved. The first Saturday in May, a car I recognized pulled into the drive. Lisa's Lexus. My heart climbed into my throat as the doors opened. Megan came out first. Taller than 3 months ago, her hair longer, pulled back in a ponytail. She ran across the yard and threw herself against me with a force that nearly knocked me off my feet. Grandpa. She was breathless. Mom said we could come. Is it okay? It's more than okay, I said. My voice thick. It's everything. Jack followed, shy at first, then grinning when he saw the beach. Lisa hung back by the car, uncertain. I walked to her and took her hands. Thank you for bringing them, I said. They asked every week, she said. Every single week. That afternoon, Megan found me on the back deck. The ocean stretched before us, blue and endless, the way it had stretched before Dorothy and me 42 years ago. She sat beside me in the chair that used to be her grandmother's. Grandpa? She looked up at me. Those serious eyes. Dorothy's eyes. Can we go fishing tomorrow? Like you used to do with Daddy when he was little? I looked at my granddaughter. At the future, sitting beside me in a deck chair. Legs swinging because they were still too short to reach the ground. At the legacy that would not end with Kyle's choices or Hale's cruelty or any of the ugliness that had tried to take this place from us. I'd love nothing more, sweetheart, I said. We'll take the Dorothy May out at dawn. Just you and me. I'll teach you to read the current, the way I taught your father. She smiled. Bright and wide and full of a trust that had not been broken yet. A trust I would spend the rest of my life deserving. Can Jack come too? Of course. There's always room on my boat for family. She leaned against my arm. We watched the sun lower toward the sound, gold spreading across the water like a blessing. And I thought, this is what Dorothy built. Not a house, not a property. This moment, this child, this light on the water, this love that outlives everything. I am standing on the dock as I tell you this. The Dorothy May rocks gently at her mooring, her hull freshly painted, her deck scrubbed clean. The sun is going down over Pamlico Sound, turning the water into liquid gold the way it does every evening, the way it has done for 10,000 evenings before me, the way it will do for 10,000 evenings after I am gone. I have had many months to think about everything that happened, to walk this coastline at dawn and at dusk, to sit in Dorothy's chair on the deck and let the salt wind work its way through the tangled mess of memory and grief and anger that a thing like this leaves behind. And I have come to understand some things. Not all of them comfortable, not all of them easy, but true. And truth, Dorothy used to say, is the only foundation worth building on. The first thing I learned is this: trust your instincts. When something feels wrong, it is wrong. I felt the shift in Kyle long before I could name it. Felt it in the way he looked at the land instead of at the ocean. Felt it in questions that circled toward money instead of toward memory. I ignored that feeling for years because he was my son, and I wanted to believe the best. But my body knew. The hairs on the back of my neck knew. God gave us instinct for a reason, and silencing it out of love is not wisdom. It is willful blindness. The second thing I learned: document everything. Write it down. Dates, times, exact words. Not because you are paranoid, but because memory is a story we tell ourselves and paper is the truth. That notebook, Dorothy's old grocery list notebook, saved my life. When the time came to prove what was happening, I had dates. I had details. I had a record that no one could dispute or gaslight away. If you are in a situation that feels dangerous, write it down. Even if you feel foolish doing it, especially then. The third, seek help early. Do not wait until the danger is undeniable. Do not wait until you are too weak or too frightened to act. I waited too long. Told myself I was imagining things. Told myself that a father should be able to handle his own family. But this was beyond handling alone. Sam saved my life by calling Agent Morales. Professional help, legal help, medical help. There is no shame in needing it. There is only danger in refusing it. I thank God that Sam made that call when she did, because another week of those pills, and there would have been no call to make. The fourth lesson is harder. Set boundaries with the people you love, even your own children. Love does not mean endless access. Love does not mean allowing someone to destroy you because they share your blood. I loved Kyle. I still love Kyle. Somewhere in the part of me that remembers a 7-year-old boy holding up his first fish with a smile that could light the whole Atlantic. But loving him does not mean I had to let him kill me. Loving someone and protecting yourself from them are not opposites. They can live in the same heart at the same time. And the fifth, forgiveness does not mean immunity. I may forgive Kyle someday. I pray about it. I ask God to soften whatever remains hard in my chest when I think of him. But forgiveness does not mean pretending it never happened. Does not mean opening the door again to someone who used it to try to take your life. You can release the anger without releasing the boundary. You can wish someone well from a safe distance. That is not cruelty. That is survival. I have told you this story not for sympathy, not for anger on my behalf, not even for the satisfaction of watching justice served, though I understand if that is part of why you stayed. I told you because somewhere out there, someone is standing where I stood. Someone is noticing strange things, small things, things that do not quite add up. Someone is telling themselves it is nothing, it is coincidence, it is paranoia. And I need that person to hear me. It is not nothing. Trust yourself. Write it down. Ask for help. You are not too old, not too proud, not too loyal to protect your own life. The ocean is calm tonight. The dolphins came through at sunset. A pod of 8. Their dorsal fins, cutting the gold water in perfect arcs. Megan saw them from the deck and shouted for me to come look, and I stood beside her and watched them pass. And I thought about Dorothy seeing this same pod, this same light, this same coast that she loved with everything she had. I thank God for this land, for the strength to fight for it, for a daughter who believed me when I needed it most, for grandchildren who still run on this beach and ask to go fishing at dawn, for the years I have left, however many they may be, to watch this water and feel this wind and know that I am still here. Dorothy built something that could not be taken, not by developers, not by criminals, not by our own son's worst choices. She built it with love and stubbornness and 33 years of showing up every single morning, and it stands. It endures, the way the coast endures, the way the ocean endures, the way love, real love, outlasts everything that tries to destroy it. If this story reached you, if it touched something in your chest, I am glad. Share it with someone who might need to hear it. Leave a thought in the comments. Tell me what you would have done. Tell me if you have been where I was. Tell me your story. Because I believe that when we share our truths, we make each other stronger. And if you want to hear more, if you want to walk with me a little longer on this coast, subscribe so we can meet again. I will be here, on this dock, watching the sun go down, listening to the ocean tell its stories the way it has since long before any of us arrived. The shore remains. And so do I. A gentle note. While inspired by real patterns of family conflict and elder exploitation, parts of this story have been dramatized for storytelling purposes. If this type of content is not your preference, feel free to explore other videos that may suit you better. Thank you for staying until the end. God bless you, and take care of the people who love you. They are the only treasure that matters.